All right, we're back here on the Chasing West podcast, where I am now joined by a first timer who went to a very good undergrad school. Not to make it seem like this is a biased podcast, that is extremely friendly to people who went to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, the greatest university in the nation, where the University of Tennessee, Knoxville baseball team, they might be number one in the nation at the moment. They might be. People are saying that they're number one in the nation, and those people will be correct. But Damichael Cole, who is actually closer now to Ole Miss, where the Tennessee Volunteers just swept them this past week. He's in Memphis, where we don't really call Memphis Tennessee. Memphis is Arkansas to a lot of folks over here. But Damichael, what do you make of that as someone who's been in Knoxville, been in East Tennessee, and been in West Tennessee? Is it the same? Is it still Tennessee? How are you?
How you doing, Chase? And Memphis is his own thing. You know, a lot of people in Memphis make the joke, Memphis. Like, I lived in Memphis, my whole life, born and raised. Yeah. And like you say, Arkansas, like, I didn't go to Arkansas a lot. I went to Mississippi, North Mississippi a little bit more, like you talked about Ole Miss, their area. Went there a little bit more, but we still differentiate ourselves from, like, Mississippi people as well. So, but when I moved, like, to Knoxville, 6 hours across the state, 450 plus miles. It's a nice difference. You still have.
It's a haul, man. Tennessee's long. People don't realize how long Tennessee is, and that's where I'm saying, like, it's just so long.
You're going across the whole state down I-40. I think exit like 10 or 11 is where you go from Memphis and you just drive across. And my exit number in Knoxville had to be like 387. Universe for the campus is like 386, 387, something like that.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yes. And that's you go 10, 11, 12, 13, 300, 321, 300, all the way to 387. Just, I mean, it gets boring, but they're completely different. There are similarities,
I've never been.
Never been to Memphis?
Never been to Memphis.
Wow. I mean,
I'm from Atlanta.
You've been to Nashville, right?
I'm in Knoxville, so I'm here. I'm a grad student here at UTK, but so I'm from Atlanta originally, and it's the same kind of thing with what you're describing with Memphis, where like Atlanta is its own thing. Like, I'm from Atlanta. Like, the rest of Georgia is nothing like Atlanta. So if you're the culture is different, but it's also the culture especially is different. But it's also just that, like, everything. It's just a different vibe. It's a different way of life. It's a different, like, there's nothing wrong with the two differences, but like, you drive through the majority of Tennessee, it's very different than what you're going to run into in Memphis. And it's just like in Georgia, if you're driving through Waycross, it's going to be a little bit different, or Statesboro, than Atlanta. Yeah.
In a lot of ways, man. Even like if you just talk about sports, everywhere else in Tennessee, football is number one, except Memphis. Memphis is the only place. The only big, now you have little small West Tennessee places that are close to Memphis that, kind of neighbor Memphis that have the same mindset. But Memphis, in terms of, the Division I prospects that come from Memphis, you're looking at more basketball. More basketball than football, whereas across the state, when I went to Knoxville has some, a couple really good basketball programs that would meet, the Memphis schools and basketball state tournaments. But like the intensity level for football and basketball is completely flipped when you go over there as compared to Memphis, where there's a lot of football talent in Memphis too, but basketball is like supreme. And once you go across the state, it's completely flipped.
Isn't Kennedy, he's from Memphis, right? Isn't Kennedy Chandler from Memphis?
Yeah. So that's another one. Chandler is definitely from Memphis. And then there have been a couple players. And then even with the football team, you have a couple guys recently that come from Memphis too. That's like a good recruiting area for them.
Man, so you got a great situation now. You joined the beat, the Memphis beat in December, and you get to go back home. That's a great thing, man. How have you liked being the Grizzlies beat reporter? Is it a dream come true? Like, what has it been like at the Commercial Appeal thus far?
Man, it's been fun. I think my dream was always, to the national level. But like, I always thought, as I started to get into this business, in college when I was covering UT sports, and I was like, man, it'd be nice to go back home at some point. But I didn't think that opportunity would ever come, just because of certain, like when they actually hired, I believe, David Cobb, who was a UT grad. as well, and that's my guy. And when he got the job, honestly, I thought, well, that job's not going to be open for a while. Like David's good. He's he's a Memphis native as well. So I was like, there goes that job. Like, and I never even considered, but the opportunity came about. I was in Philly at the Philadelphia Inquirer 2.5 years. That's a dream out of college, right? That's a top 5 media market, and I had a great role. I had a sports culture role where I'd go to a Phillies game on a day. Then Sunday I'd go to Lincoln Financial Field, for an Eagles game. Then maybe a Wednesday during the week I'd go to the Wells Fargo Center for a Sixers game. I mean, it was like a dream job in a way. But when I got presented this opportunity, it allowed me to, create a, more of a niche, more of a focus on one thing, because I do pride myself on, football, basketball, baseball, all things that I really love, like equally. But I was able to come here, be a beat writer, be one of the youngest, NBA beat writers in the country as well. So that was, appeasing. And then it's home. Like, I never imagined coming back home. I spent 4 years in Knoxville, and right after Knoxville, I left and I went to Philly. So it's like I didn't have, that time to go back home really like that. And so coming back home, being around, but yeah, it's been so fun, man. And then the team is really good. The people really, love the team as well.
Have you been back to a game on Knoxville since you graduated, or no?
I was supposed to go back. Was that March 2020? You know what happened? What happened? 2020. We were planning to go back orange and white weekend. I was supposed to go back orange and white, and then I was going to go. I forgot who the series was against that weekend. It was real big SEC series.
Yeah, baseball.
Yep. So I was going to go back. I was going to go back there to Lindsey Nelson for that, and COVID happened. We got shut down, and I was stuck in Philly for the next year and a half.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. It's already been 2 years since all that. But yeah, no, I think the orange and white game's messed up this year because they're renovating the stadium, so they're not even doing it at Neyland, which I forgot where they said they were. It's not Nashville. They're doing it somewhere else, and I should probably look that up before that comes up, but I'm not sure where it is. But in terms of the Grizzlies, the team that you're quite familiar with, Damichael, and you've been keeping up with a lot this year. The first thing that stands out to me about this team, and I want to get your perspective as someone who has watched every Grizzlies game this year, and I'm sure you've heard this and you've seen this, but like the fact that this team has still just been just as dominant when Ja's not in the lineup, how do you explain that? Because like as someone who watches every Hawks game and sees what happens when Trae Young is out of the game and misses time, and like if he's just having a bad night and what that does to this team, like it's a rarity for a team to do what the Grizzlies have done this year. Why, in your estimation, have the Grizzlies been able to withstand missing Ja for a pretty significant portion, almost 20 games this year?
Right. Well, the easy answer would be, they built depth. That's what a lot of people will really say in the simplest form. But if you look at the Hawks, I mean, personally, I think the Hawks have a decent amount of depth too at the wing positions and things like that. So it's not that simple. I think it's the fact that you look with a lot of star players in the NBA, the system is kind of built around them. The system in Memphis isn't necessarily built around Ja. It's more of, Taylor Jenkins, fast up and down. The bench plays the same way. The starters play the same way. And even without Ja Morant in the game, the style of play, they're still at the top of the league in points and paints. They're still at the top of the league, in free throw attempts. They're still at the top of the league in, steals, deflections, loose balls recovered. All those things, the core values of this team still remain the same because, you think about LeBron James, for example. Everywhere he goes, the system is automatically built around him. That's why when he misses time, you see a big drop-off. Trae Young in Atlanta, super pick and roll heavy guy. So you take the ball out of his hands, which is when he gets hurt. Now you're putting the ball in guys' hands who really don't have the ball much. Whereas with the Grizzlies, you're putting the ball in guys' hands a little bit more. But I wrote a couple stories on this too, on the commercial appeal. It's two main players who have really benefited the most. Tyus Jones. So they have a really good backup point guard as well. Tyus Jones is one of the best backup point guards in the NBA. And to put that in perspective, like, he has led the NBA in assist to turnover ratio the last 4 seasons. 4 seasons. he takes care of the ball like it's an infant. Like he does not turn the ball over, Chase. And right now, I think he's at 6.6 assists per turnover. Yeah. The next closest is like 5.2. It's a wide gap. Like Tyus Jones is that guy when it comes to that. And there's also Desmond Bain. So the Grizzlies hit on the margins. Like Desmond Bain was the last pick in the first round, and now he's one of the top candidates for most improved. Like that's what you have to do. In the summer, Desmond Bain, when he was in the draft process, he was viewed as this, guy from TCU, spot up shooter, 3-and-D, that whole label. The Grizzlies challenged him in the summer by playing him at point guard in summer league. Wanted to get more out of it. It was super uncomfortable. He wasn't really doing great at it, but they kept pressing. And now you're seeing the results because when Tyus Jones is out of the game, Desmond Bain assumes backup point guard duties, and the team has flourished. So that's been a big part of it. Those two guys and them just keeping the team going, just keeping the system intact. Because the perfect example would be even when Ja was healthy at one point, there was a 3-game window when everyone was in healthy safety protocols and all that in January. Tyus Jones and Desmond Bain missed 3 games at the same time. The Grizzlies went 1-2 in that stretch. And I mean, it was ugly. Because Ja Morant would play great. Like he averaged 35 points over those 3 games. But that little time he was out of the game, the Grizzlies were getting destroyed. So I think Desmond Bain missed 3 games, came right back after that. And to put in perspective, like how important he is, Tyus Jones even missed the next 3 games after those 3 games, and the Grizzlies won all 3 of those games. So they just need one of those guys back. Now they have both of those guys, even without Ja Morant. And that's why they're thriving. The system is Taylor Jenkins he's a genius. Like he's a genius, to put it simple, and the system is strong.
Well, describe the system. What is Taylor Jenkins? Because you said it's not about Ja. It's more than that. Like, what is he doing? What kind of cool sets? Because I mean, you got the Spanish dragfly stuff that we're doing in Atlanta, stuff with Trey, with Capella and Collins. But like, what specifically for folks that aren't able to tune into every Grizzlies game? What is he running, especially in the half court? Because they love to be in the full court. And this is going to lead into the another question I have, because my biggest concern with the Grizzlies is their half court sets come playoff time. Like I'm concerned when they can't run. Like what happens when the game slows down and when they're forced to score in tight games, and it's just Ja is going to have to, like, the offense is going to have to turn into what Ja can do at some point. But what does he run? What does he do that separates him as a coach? What makes him a genius?
Chase, I mean, you pretty much hit it, because with him, the thing is they like to get out and run. I mean, they're so, and it's everyone. It's when Ja gets the board, he pushes it. DeAnthony Melton, Tyus Jones, these wings, they run the wings like wide receivers. A lot of their game is getting up the court so fast, even when they don't get the fast break points, they get up the court so fast. Let's say the first guy back for the opponent is the point guard. He has to identify whoever the first guy, back is. And usually it's not the point guard. It's one of those wings running, or sometimes it's Jaren Jackson or one of the bigs. So he has to guard him. And now you have mismatches around the floor, and they attack those mismatches. So in the simplest form, their half court stuff, like you said, honestly, it's really not great to me. The half court is their weakness. They're pretty much heavy pick and roll. Yeah. They do a lot of their heavy pick and roll, and they get a lot of good stuff out of their pick and roll. They run a lot of stuff for Desmond Bain, but pick and roll.
Who does Ja love pick and roll with? Who is his favorite partner?
Steven Adams. So I wrote a story on this with the commercial appeal. Steven Adams and Ja Morant's pick and roll chemistry is very unique. So Steven Adams, he's played with Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, and all these guys. And he comes to Memphis and he gives Ja Morant this tip. Steven Adams is basically a brick wall. I mean, so they have this weird thing. You have to to go and you have to picture this in your head, as I said. When he sets a screen on the guard, is coming from behind Ja Morant. So Ja Morant puts the guard on his back.
Yeah.
When the guard is on Ja Morant's back, he's slowly going towards the rim, and Steven Adams rolls to the rim as well. But when he rolls to the rim, he's not rolling to get a basket. He's rolling to shield the big man. So when he shields the big man, what you have is Ja has the defender on his back, the point guard, and Steven Adams has the big man probably on his left shoulder, and Ja gets a wide open layup 3/4 of the time. If he doesn't get that wide open layup, when they run that 1-5 pick and roll, Desmond Bane is usually in the corner. Desmond Bane is the one guy on the Grizzlies. Every team on the scouting report, they said that's the guy you don't leave. So usually it's a wide open layup. Sometimes it's not a wide open layup. It's a kick out to Desmond Bane, and that's money too. So they put those 3 guys on one side a lot of time. And when you put them all on one side, you're forcing some tough decisions. So they do a lot of pick and pop with Jaren Jackson too. But at the end of the day, when you talk about their best set, their money pick and roll, every time it's going to be Ja and Steven Adams or Brandon Clark. They do the same thing with Brandon Clark. He's learned how to do the whole shield thing too. Steven Adams is just more effective at it because he's like 7 feet 260 and he like picks up 7-footers off the ground. But that's kind of their money thing. But they're pretty heavy pick and roll. You know, that's we've seen in the playoffs. You know, James Harden, super heavy pick and roll guy. It kind of didn't work out for him. But the Grizzlies, they try to pride themselves on running and creating those mismatches in transition. You know, they're number 1 in the league in second chance points too. So you look at their field goal percentage numbers, which goes back to your point about the half court sets. They're not really that good. They're like middle of the 15, 16, 17th in field goal percentage, but they're number 1 in second chance points. They're number 1 in offensive rebounds. So at the end of the day, you're getting more shots. It kind of evens out. So even though they're able to be 15, 16, 17th in the league in field goal percentage, they're still tied for the most points per game.
How has Jaren Jackson been? Do you think he has shown flashes that he can be? I mean, he's a big part of their future. And it's like every young team goes through this, right? So not to bring everything back to the Hawks and stuff like that, but like when you start winning, the time is of the essence, where it's like, okay, now you've won. Like the Hawks are now in a rough spot. If they miss the playoffs, which is a strong possibility with the play in and like who they get matched up, if they get the Nets in that first game, like they're out, like it's over. Like it's not looking good right now. So after making the Eastern Conference Finals though, the year before, and you have a superstar like Trey, like we've seen what happens even with Zion in New Orleans, where it's just like, if you're not moving in the right direction and we're not happy and you're not doing everything, then it's over. Like I'm moving on. Like the pressure is just there. Ja is now there. Ja is people can debate whether or not he's true first team All NBA, that kind of thing. But the point being is that like he's in that conversation. And once you're in that conversation, and once you become a number 2 seed in the Western Conference, the clock's ticking. And now you're like, oh, we're back. Grit and grind is back. We're excited. This is Memphis basketball is back. We are getting that playoff gate revenue. We're going for it now. Like we're moving. The thing that I wonder about is like a lot of their future is still tied into what Jaren Jackson's going to be, because Desmond Bane's a huge hit and we know he's a huge hit, but they need more. If you're going to stay in that level, stay in that top 4 seed level, you're going to need Jaren Jackson to be what he was before the injury. You need him to be an elite 3-point shooter. You need him to be a dominant pick and pop threat that where you have Bane in the corner. You have to worry about Jaren Jackson. You have to worry about Steven Adams shielding dudes the way he does, like you talked about. Like you need all of that to coalesce, but you really do need that. And I wonder from your perspective, from what you've seen from Jaren this year, has he shown enough for you to believe that he is someone who can get there? Because like he's shown flashes in the past, but do you think he has shown enough that his chemistry with Ja will be enough to keep this thing moving as a top 4 West team for the next couple of years?
Chase, I think he can get there. And quite frankly, I mean, he better with the money they just paid him.
Yeah. That's another part of it. Yeah.
Exactly. They committed to him financially. So
yeah.
With that being said, you know, it's still a working process in terms of how he and Ja play together. Like when I wrote a story actually a couple weeks ago on Jaren Jackson being the most important factor to a finals run for this team.
Yeah.
And all of his stats.
We're on the same page about all of this so far. We need to disagree on something on this podcast.
we might get there. So with everything with Jaren Jackson correlates to winning and losing. When he shoots well, they win. When he shoots bad, they lose. And the key to him, I think, is right now you're playing him at the 4 a lot of times, and he's not abusing these little guys as much as you want him to. He's 6'11". He's guarded every night, by a smaller guy. Most nights, it's 6'8", 6'7" wings who are playing the small ball four. Some nights he's matched up against bigger power forwards. And from what I've seen, he actually plays better against those bigger guys because that's when he's able to go off the dribble and use that skill set that made him a top 5 pick. That's what people were drooling over with Jaren Jackson. Wow, he can shoot and take it off the dribble and things like that. The skill set is there. He has it all.
Yeah.
And when he plays the 5, you're matched up against these big, slow foot centers. He's able to showcase that off the dribble game a little bit more, draw fouls, things like that. But to the contrary, I haven't seen him develop the back to the basket. And when you talk about half court, it's a big reason right there. They don't have that guy they can just throw it in the low post to and say, here, like we can't do nothing here. Just make something happen.
Yeah.
Jaren Jackson, usually he'll have to face up and he'll try to, take it off the dribble. But there's no, turnarounds and up and under is really just consistently in his bag. He has this hook shot and stuff he shows occasionally, but it's not a go-to move. You look at DeAndre Ayton and his hook shot. You look at, Giannis and just him being Giannis and Anthony Davis and, so forth with these other power forwards. And then, of course, the centers, Embiid, Jokic, etc. Cat. They all, when it comes push to shove, you can just throw the ball to them and move out of the way. The Grizzlies aren't there with Jaren Jackson yet. Can they get there? Yeah, because he has it all, Chase. Like, the way he dribbles the ball, we seen one of the best Grizzlies plays this season was when he dribbled the ball past half court and threw an alley-oop to Ja Morant. Like, he has a freakish skill set, but the thing is he has to consistently put it together, and that's where they are right now. He'll have one game where he'll score 24 points, make 4 3-pointers, block 5 shots, have 8 rebounds, and you're like, man, this is the dude. This is the unicorn, as they call him in Memphis, the unicorn. And then there's a game where he has 8 points, 5 fouls, plays 16 minutes. And you're like, man, we're glad we got Brandon Clark because, the depth. He comes in and kind of, shields and takes some of that pressure off of Jaren Jackson. But yeah, a lot of the future is tied to Jaren Jackson, I do believe.
We should probably talk about Ja Morant before Grizzlies fans who are listening to this get upset. It comes back to Ja. What have you learned about him? What do you like about Ja off the court? What have you seen with how he is with teammates, like how he is with fans? Like, I'm curious because he seems like someone who just really, really loves the city and has just become just a big part of Memphis basketball. And he seems like someone who truly loves being there and wants to be there for a long time. Is it the vibe that you've gotten? And then, like, what have you seen with him, with teammates, how coaches describe him, his work ethic? What have you seen from Ja Morant this year?
Yeah, I've spent the first 18 years of my life, living in Memphis, and I've seen, Jason Williams, Strowell Swift, Pau Gasol, Bonzi Wells, Shane Battier, and then the grit and grind era, Lorenzen Wright too, homegrown guy.
Yeah.
But grit and grind era comes along. You get Marc Gasol, Zebo, Mike Conley, I say all these guys.
Shame to beat.
Yeah, the best number 2 pick of all time. So I say all these names to say that I haven't seen a guy relate to Memphis like Ja Morant does. These people love him. It's afforded me the chance to write some really creative stuff. I was in Houston last week, and I wrote a story where I went to Johnny Dang, Houston celebrity jeweler, and I went to his jewelry shop and talked about a grill he did for Ja Morant. And it's things like that where he really, when you talk about off the court, how he relates to the city, I think about like Mike Conley. Mike Conley was one of the most beloved players of all time. But you weren't going to hear Mike Conley's name like in a Memphis artist's rap song or an R&B song or anything like that, like you hear Ja Morant's name. He's culturally too, he's very in tune, and like something like grills, that's been a big part of Memphis culture forever. And Ja Morant goes and buys this big diamond grill and he buys these chains. So now, even though he's not playing, he's on the bench and everyone's looking at him, and he just feels like a Memphis guy in that way. Same thing with teammates. He has their back almost like a role, like one of those role players that are like the enforcers. I think of like Udonis Haslem,
right?
Or I can use the Hawks for you, like Solomon Hill when
God, I miss Solomon Hill. I miss Solomon Hill.
If something goes wrong with Trey, Solomon's coming.
Yeah.
And it's almost like sometimes you gotta tell y'all, like in your head, you're like, dude, you're the superstar. Like you can't risk that because the other day, so they played, who was their last game against? It'll come to me. But in the last game, the Warriors, they played the Warriors, and Bielitsa.
Because everybody was out for Golden State in that game, I think, right?
Yeah. So Bielitsa commits a foul, and he hits Dylan Brooks in the shoulder like really hard. It became a flagrant foul. Ja Morant not playing on the bench, and he gets up, and he puts a little colorful language in it as well. But he's like, he's not cut like that. And he's like, and it's like, dude, you can't just he kind of, but he rides hard for his teammates. Like when Ja Morant got into it, with the Bulls that game where Steven Adams picked up Tony Bradley and carried him off, and it went kind of viral. He wasn't laughing about that like everyone else. He was like, he was doing what he should do because I do the same thing. That's Ja Morant's mindset. He rides hard for his teammates. It's kind of really refreshing to see, from a superstar, because usually the superstars are the ones getting babysitted. If someone in those OKC days even came close to Russell Westbrook, you knew Kendrick Perkins, Serge Ibaka, Thabo Sefolosha, you knew all those guys were going to come over there, and Russ didn't have to lay a finger. I mean, he could, say whatever he wanted to say, but he didn't have to do anything. And in Memphis, Ja doesn't have to, but he takes on that role of being that guy. So he's loved in that way. And like I said, the city is really receptive of the things he's doing, but he's really a down-to-earth superstar. He's real chill.
So you like talking to him?
Yeah.
Is he pretty open?
Yeah, he's pretty much, they've been, I tell people, they've been winning so much since I got here. Like, I haven't really,
you can't leave.
Yeah, like that's what they're saying. But since I got here, the very first game I got here was when they lost his first game back. They lost to OKC, and the fan in the crowd yelled out that the team was better without him, and it kind of hurt him a little bit. Like he basically was saying things like, "I don't know what you get out of that," talking about the fan, and it became a big deal. It was a real big deal because everyone was like, dude, the team is better with Ja Morant. Like, why would you say something like that? But overall, since I've been here, he's one of the guys. Dylan Brooks brings the energy, but Ja Morant brings those highlight plays that, take the energy up to another level. He's real cool to talk to. Like I said, after the game, he's real good for some good sound bites. He gave us the we're not dodging no smoke, we're climbing up the chimney. That was one of a lot of people's favorite ones. I asked him if the Grizzlies were the most exciting team in the NBA. He doesn't shy away from those type questions. Players, some players, those veteran guys, we'll let the play do the talking. Ja was like, 100%, we're the most exciting team in the league. But he doesn't talk about himself as much. If you almost every press conference that we have with him, he's vouching for Jaren Jackson, Defensive Player of the Year, Taylor Jenkins, Coach of the Year, Desmond Bane, Most Improved Player. You go to his tweets, I guarantee you scroll down his tweets, you're going to see it like 3 or 4 times. Jaren Jackson, DPOY, Desmond Bane, MIP, Taylor Jenkins, COY. Like, he vouches for these guys all the time. And everyone's like, dude, what about you? You're not going to say Ja Morant for MVP? And he's like, no, I just want a ring. That's what he says. So very selfless too. Like sometimes when he had the 52-point game, he talked about it a little bit, but I think Jaren Jackson and one of the other players. No, this was in New York when we were at the Garden. Jaren Jackson just jumps on the mic because they're trying to get Ja to talk about himself and he's just not doing it. So Jaren just look, this dude is amazing. This is special what we're witnessing right now, and that's how it is. He doesn't talk about himself as much, but he really hypes up those guys around him. And that was in the Garden, mind you, when every other Grizzlies player got minimal reaction when their name was called, and Ja Morant almost got a home ovation in the Garden when his name was announced.
So you think Jaren Jackson are pretty cool? Like Jaren's cool with it being Ja's team?
They're tight. Yeah, they're real tight. And Jaren Jackson, like I talked about how Ja vouches for Jaren Jackson. Jaren Jackson's the same way when it comes to him. I think about when Ja Morant was, after he was announced an all-star starter, the Grizzlies did They were waiting on him, in the pregame to come into the tunnel so they all could just jump out and surprise him. Jaren Jackson was getting out of his car at the same time as Ja Morant. So usually, Ja Morant figured something was up because Jaren Jackson, when he gets out of the car, he's usually just like, "What's up?" And then they and they walk. Jaren Jackson gets out of his car and he starts sprinting. He's like, "Hey, everyone, he's coming," because it was earlier than normal. He's letting them know he's coming. So it's just to show like his excitement for Ja and this whole, journey. Like he's like Ja, one of Ja's biggest cheerleaders. He's been there with him since he got there.
Well, we'll end on this. I have said on this podcast, and this is something that if I'm a Grizzlies fan, I'm nervous about the Timberwolves. I'm nervous about that first round matchup. And that might I would not have thought that like 2 months ago, even maybe a month and a half ago. The half court stuff with Ant, Russell, and Towns, where I'm like, okay, in a 7-game series, like I want to see what this looks like. How does Steven Adams get drawn out on Cat? Like, what does Cat do with Adams, and how does that matchup work? How does Jaren Jackson work with Vanderbilt and with Minnesota? Because he's just been so good for them at the 4. Just a defensive whiz. Like, I actually think Minnesota is a bad matchup. I mean, you throw in Pat Bev on Ja Morant, like suddenly, like we're just gonna get like a really back. It's a NBA Twitter perfect series. Like it's a perfect NBA Twitter series that like the national media will not care, or the national fan base or whatever will not care about, but I will watch every single game like losing my mind because I think that goes 7. Like, am I crazy for thinking that Wolves is actually kind of a terrifying first round matchup for the Grizzlies at this point?
Okay. Well, you were wondering when we would disagree. So
okay,
I think here we go. So
save the best for last.
This is the thing. With the Timberwolves, they're 2-2 against the Grizzlies. They've been back and forth all season long. Great matchup. But I think the Grizzlies are just better overall. And you look at the things that the Timberwolves are really good at, and you can say the same thing with the Grizzlies, but everything that the Timberwolves are near top of the league at, the Grizzlies are better. And in a way, they're similar in their styles. They're both like to get up and down in transition. I believe last time they played, so this was late February. So I'm sure the numbers have moved around a little bit, but the Grizzlies were top in transition points. The Timberwolves were top 5. I believe they were like 4th or something in that range. Steals and blocks, same thing. Grizzlies number 1 in steals, number 1 in blocks. Timberwolves top 10 in both of those categories, but behind the Grizzlies. So the same stats that the Grizzlies kind of make their name on in terms of wreaking havoc, creating turnovers, getting out in transition. The Timberwolves do the same thing, but the Grizzlies have been a little bit better at it. But just from a matchup perspective, I think the Timberwolves are the preferable matchup for them, because you talk about those guards. And D'Angelo Russell, he had a real good game, in the last time they played Memphis. They won, and D'Angelo Russell took over in the fourth quarter. Anthony Edwards played kind of bad in that game, but they're going to have Dylan Brooks to guard one of those guys. Cat, it's amazing. He's going to, like you say, he's going to draw Steven Adams out. But the Grizzlies are versatile with their bigs in terms of they can have, Steven Adams in the game. And Steven Adams, you're not going to bully ball Steven Adams. And then Brandon Clark, who is a little bit smaller, but he just brings the energy. He can guard pretty much 2 through 5, maybe some teams 1 through 5. And when it comes to Cat, bringing him out to the 3-point line, he's going to be comfortable there. So I agree. It's a tough matchup. I say 6 games Grizzlies, but I feel like everything that the Timberwolves, if you look at the numbers, each stat that the Timberwolves are good at, the Grizzlies are just a little bit better. And they've been playing, great ball. Like, don't get me wrong, the Timberwolves have been playing great ball. But I'm at the point now, Chase, I say, at the end of the day, you're in the Western Conference. There's not a perfect matchup out there. You get the Clippers, wow, throw that record out the window. Paul George is back now. So you throw that out the window. You get the Nuggets or the Jazz in that 5-6 range. You get the Nuggets. They're supposed to get Jamal Murray back. They could get Michael Porter back. That's a top 2-3 seed for the last 3 seasons when healthy. And then the Jazz beat the Grizzlies in 5 games last year. So there's no, perfect matchup in the Western Conference. You just gotta, suck it up.
Deal with the hand you're dealt. Yeah,
exactly. But I think, the Timberwolves, that's 6 games, I think. And you talk about the Pat Bev matchup. there's going to be some fun with that.
Yes.
Chase. The last time they played, it got a little cranked up. You know, John, like I said, he's usually pretty open, but after the game, when we asked him about Pat Bev, you can tell that's not his favorite player in the league. We'll just say that.
Pat Bev is just like the dude. Like I would love to have Pat Bev on the Hawks. The Hawks defense is atrocious, and just having somebody like him, like you want somebody like that on your team. But if he's not on your team, he drives you insane. That's just how it works. Damichael, what can the good folks check out from you across the Commercial Appeal this week and Locked On Grizzlies and everything else? What can they check out from you, man?
Yeah, so Monday through Friday, Locked On Grizzlies. You know, we're pretty much going to be previewing games, talking about everything that's going on in the games, and then we'll discuss some of the things that are going on with my Commercial Appeal work as well. So I have every week I have 2 to 3 feature stories, takeout stories that have very little to do with what's happening on the court, profiling some things like I talked about with John Morant in the grill that he got done, and things like that. So we do a lot of those fun stories that really are refreshing. And then, we do some basketball breakdowns as well. I just did the story on Desmond Bane stepping up as the backup point guard with the Grizzlies, having, 4 games of 5 or more assists in his last 5 games, longest stretch of his career, doing things. But yeah, there's a bigger breakdown of that on the Commercial Appeal. And, we're going to have the game coverage. I'm traveling, so I'll be on the road for all these games. And, when we're on the road, we get some exclusive things as well. So, just check us out, commercialappeal.com, and we'll have everything covered and then some.
There you go. Go subscribe to the Commercial Appeal if you've not already done so. Go support local journalism. It's good, and you can read Damichael's work every day. So go do that and subscribe to the Locked On Grizzlies if you've not already done so. Damichael, thank you so much for making the time, man. This was a lot of fun. I greatly appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Chase. Thank you for having me. Go Vols.
Go Vols. There we go.